Hold my rope, not my story. I draw lines for a living, property lines, flood lines, the invisible borders that keep a city from arguing with its own river. GIS is cartography with less romance and better undo. I sit in a room with 3 monitors and make decisions in pixels that construction crews later treat like scripture. My wife, Tess, runs a climbing gym 5 blocks from our apartment. The quarry smells like chalk and determination. On weeknights, you can hear the clack of quick draws and the soft thud of people remembering gravity has veto power. I do not climb much, knees humility, but I like being the person who hands Tess a thermos at closing time and calls the rope by its right name. In March, a new coach arrived, a former route setter named Jax who wore his hair like he thought wind deserved a chance. He had the habit good instructors have. He made his sentences hold people up. Trust lives in the knot, he'd say. Everything else is acting. Tess liked his curriculum. I liked that she came home smelling like someone who had worked and not someone who had been worked on. Still, boundaries like maps need legends. On the second Tuesday of Jax's tenure, our shared credit alert pinged me while I was coloring a floodplain a shade of honest blue. Quarry climb, 2 charges, 2158 and 2249. 2 is not evidence. It's a headline auditioning for an article. Tess came in after 11 and kissed my forehead the way she does when she knows I've been cautious all day. Laid off a guy from maintenance, she said, putting the kettle on. He kept forgetting the difference between friendliness and policy. The gym doesn't need poets, I said. Not the kind that perform in hallways, she said. Then she saw my phone, the alert still awake. 2 charges. I closed the register, then Clara rang up after-hours tea for the staff. We were resetting holds and decided to be human. She didn't blink, didn't apologize for the tea. The kettle clicked. Want some? I'll take the human, I said. We drank and talked about bolt placements and culverts, which is our domestic version of flirting. I let the headline go back to being numbers. The first time I met Jax, I was at the quarry to swap out a dead exit sign battery. He was teaching a private lesson, a belay check with a guy who had the forearms of someone who argues with refrigerators. Jax saw me and nodded with the respect climbers give anyone touching tools. You're Tess's cartographer, he said. Her husband, I said, and stuck the screwdriver in the right place. Same thing, he said, as if mapping a life and living it were synonyms. He watched my hands. Lefty-loosey is a theory, he added. Right now it wants to be a personality. We both laughed and the battery surrendered. After, he walked me to the desk and asked about flood maps. The river wants to be everywhere, I said. We tell it where to be dramatic. Climbing is the reverse, he said. People want to be dramatic. The wall tells them where to be honest. He said it without theater and I believed him. Tess came out of the office and bumped my shoulder with hers in the way that means thanks and yes and what time are you off. We ate dumplings at the counter across the street and argued about whether lines on maps should be thicker if they protect people who don't read legends. We both wanted yes. The budget wanted Ask Me in June. A week later, the quarry did a live stream fundraiser to help a youth program replace harnesses. I clicked the link from my kitchen while a dataset insisted on corrupting itself every 7th save. The camera was fixed on the main wall. Tess belayed. Kids did the thing kids do when a room believes in them. After the climbing, someone forgot to kill the stream. You know this flavor of sentence by now. The frame stayed. The gym flickered toward closing. Off to the side, Jack stood too close to Tess while she coiled rope. He said something I couldn't hear. He lifted a hand, the same reflex I'd seen 1,000 times on 1,000 men, aimed at that strand of hair that always escapes when she works. Tess stepped back before he touched. He dropped the hand halfway, then pointed instead at a knot she'd tied and said something that made her smile purely about nylon. The camera finally went black, late and guilty. When she came home, I set the laptop on the counter as if it were a witness invited to testify. The stream forgot its manners, I said. I know, she said. Clara texted after we closed. Jack started to do the hair thing. I told him my head isn't on the equipment list. She said it like a person who had had practice saying hard things and kept the tone from making an enemy. He apologized in 2 languages. I said pick one and use it tomorrow. I don't need a play-by-play, I said. I need a legend. I wrote rules for a living. I could write one for a marriage without feeling like a cop. On the back of an old topo map, I wrote 3 lines with a Sharpie. 1, no uninvited touch. 2, no private belays after hours. If the wall needs you, book it. 3, say slack when the floor tilts. Tess read it, kissed the side of my head, then added with the pen, *4 names, not pronouns. If someone is in our story, they get letters. We taped the map to the inside of the spice cabinet behind the turmeric because the turmeric was already yellow and would forgive the color clash. On Monday, Jax asked if he could talk to me before Tess's shift. He stood by the vending machine like a kid pretending to be thirsty. I was out of line, he said. I'm used to being the guy who takes care of people. Taking care is not touching what isn't mine. He held out a hand like it had learned something in a night. I shook it because I want to live in a city where apologies convert. He made himself small for the rest of the week in a way that didn't require theater. His coaching got better. He watched people's feet more than their faces. Tess began coming home earlier. Not because of him, I think, but because the gym ran like a place with a boundary that wasn't a fence. Then came Saturday at the quarry, the real quarry, the closed limestone cut outside town where climbers practice being poor substitutes for mountains. A storm had moved on. The rock had the kind of damp that makes chalk humble. Tess wanted to take the kids who'd met their fundraising goal on their first outdoor top rope day. She asked if I would handle logistics. Maps are only useful if they touch dirt. I printed parking coordinates and brought duct tape like a ritual. Jax drove the van with 4 harnesses and 6 stories. Tess rode with me with a cooler that believed in oranges. The sky enacted weather without malice. Out there, climbing looks less like a sport and more like infrastructure. Anchors, slings, courtesy. I watched Jax set a master point and back it up, explain the figure-8 follow-through to a kid who thought knots were biology. He looked at Tess exactly when he should and not when he shouldn't. The kids whooped at a lizard. I taped a hazard sign near a crumbly lip because the map of my brain keeps track of edges even when the surface is making jokes. Halfway through, a girl named Mina came down the slab and sat hard on her ankle. The sound was not dangerous, but it was unambiguous. Tess crouched, Jax fetched the med kit, and I did the small miracle of knowing what to do even though I was not a certified anything. I made space. We rapped, we elevated, we said the calm things like we had been trained by fewer emergencies and better shows. Mina cried in embarrassment more than pain. Her friend said, "You were brave anyway." And we all believed it because she had rope dust on her elbows like credentials. Back home, we put the cooler on the counter and both leaned against the fridge like it was an answer key. I said, "Your head still isn't on the equipment list." And she laughed from the belly because the day had been long enough to deserve a laugh. We ate oranges and listed our blessings in the order they could be peeled. Trust, like a map, wants updates.